Neurodevelopment is such a fascinating topic. We all go through these stages of brain-body development when we're young, and then it impacts us for the rest of our lives. But a lot of people aren't super familiar with these concepts. Yeah, it's so true. And this topic is especially fascinating for me because I went through the early stages of neurodevelopment twice in my life. Once during early childhood and again during my mid-20s. When I was 26 in the spring of 2019, I was experiencing neurobiological activity of an infant. I was literally experiencing brain-body activity mimicking the stages of early neurodevelopment from infancy, affecting the way that I could walk, talk, speak, understand language, interact with my sense of identity and the world around me. It was a very fascinating time, to say the least. And then a year later, when I was 27 years old, in the spring of 2020, I was experiencing neurobiological activity from middle childhood to early adolescence, early teenagehood. Hey, let me tell you, going through adolescence does not get any easier the second time around. What did you learn during your case studies, or what were some conclusions that they led to? Yeah, so my research led to several new discoveries, and it was a combination of learning about neuroscience, studying my experiences, and slowly drawing some new connections. And so the conclusions I came to were not things I directly learned from other sources. They were new things that I kind of figured out by piecing together my experience in relation to what I was learning from neuroscience. So my 10th thesis statement or discovery along these case study adventures is that the neuroscience of living with multiple inner persons may be described as adaptable consciousness condition, or ACC. When chronic traumatic stress activations during early stages of neurodevelopment result in unique neural wiring of the social engagement system, this ranges along a spectrum, and on the far end of the spectrum is what I refer to as kaleidoscope integration, where the roles within the social engagement system don't just operate independently of one another within the unconsciousness and create unique experiences and maybe dissociative shifts or unique styles of projections, but these roles within the social engagement system exist, operate, and continue expanding with such profound independence of one another that they're actually experienced as their own separate people. And each person within this experience has their own unique encounter with the conscious mind of perception, their own unique encounter with their unconscious mind of memory data, so autobiographical information and implicit memories creating various sensations and action patterns. And then each person within someone living with adaptable consciousness condition or living with multiple inner persons also has their own unique experience of the unconscious body, the way that muscles engage, the way that facial features instinctively create themselves and convey expressions from inner to outer realities, the way that the heart beats and heart rate variability, the way that oxygen and blood flow throughout the brain and the body, the way that the digestive system naturally operates, communication within and throughout nervous systems, the way the enteric nervous system flows and connects with the central nervous system, the way the autonomic nervous system flows and connects with the somatic nervous system, the way that all of these different things operate and exist within the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the unconscious body. Each person within one body has their own unique experience because the neural wiring within the social engagement system has created these unique roles that exist, operate, and continue expanding with such profound independency and autonomy that they're no longer just distinct regions of one person. They're instead separate persons, independently experienced states of consciousness, not just this unique role within the neural wiring, but an actual person. Everything that makes a person is experienced in multiplicity because of the miraculously profound styles of neurobiological wiring. And you can find out more about this concept of unique integration in my book, Liberated Consciousness. There's a whole spectrum with a bunch of different ways to describe unique integration, where different styles of energetic flows through neural connectivity create unique experiences for parts of consciousness. The miraculous aspect about this unique order of neural wiring is that nothing is compromised. Everything that's needed, everything that is intended to exist and operate and contribute to the beautiful wonders of the human experience, it's all still there. It's all completely intact. It's just operating in a unique way because it is surviving chronic traumatic stress. So it's really, really profoundly beautiful. There's all this pain that happened and it created this unique neural wiring, and now consciousness is evolutionarily adapting and saying, you know what, I'm gonna keep flowing no matter what. You know what, I'm gonna rise above the pain and I am going to adapt in an evolutionary capacity to revolutionize the human experience. It is profound in every manner of the word. All the different components contributing to the unique expanses of the human experience exist within someone living with adaptable consciousness condition. They're experienced in such a profoundly unique way. The region of neural wiring associated with parent-child bonding from this age, and the region of neural wiring associated with parent-child bonding from this age, and the region of neural wiring associated with emotional intimacy from this age. All of these could create their own persons within one body. And there's an infinite potential for this because we've got over 100 trillion neural connections in our brain. That's just our brain. And then we have our whole entire body that has a bunch more portions of neural data and neural wiring. And every single year of life is adding to the neural wiring of the social engagement system with over a dozen different roles in this system. So there could be hundreds or thousands of persons inhabiting one body, just depending on how neural wiring is developed. So if there's one traumatic event during early childhood, for example, and then that traumatic stress keeps being activated, then each year of neural wiring that's adding to the social engagement system is being disrupted, and there could be dozens and dozens of roles within the social engagement system that develop independently of one another. And then as the child and teenager shifts to adulthood, then you've got like 15 different people inside of one body. And every time that person is forward, according to the activation of neural data contributing to life experience in relation to attachment well-being, that's creating certain styles of brain-body operation within the unconsciousness, then new experiential elements are filed in relation to this person and this region of neural wiring, and then the persons continue to expand as their own unique person. And the distinction of the independence and autonomy of these different roles within the neural wiring of the social engagement system then continues expanding. Then it's not just this role from when the person was 5 years old, it's this role who has their own sense of life, this own person who's experienced this year, and their own person who's experienced this year. And then there's all these other persons who have their own experiences of that. So this person might have access to neural data from every year of life because the region of neural wiring they're connected with was chronically contributing to life experience, and so new experiential elements were filed in this region of neural wiring. But then you might have this inner person, and this region of neural wiring becomes activated like once every 5 years, and then new experiential elements are only added to this neural wiring every 5 years, and so this neural wiring becomes activated, and the person might not remember the past 5 years. And this neural wiring becomes activated, and there might be all these glitches in the understandings about the sense of identity because this neural data hasn't been activated, and so it doesn't know about all of this stuff that's been gathered from the past many years. It only has access to a small portion of neural data that's been added every 5 years, and then there's all these time gaps and amnesia gaps and all of these amnesic barriers and all of these different things that can come up. And so adaptable consciousness condition, the social engagement system, neural wiring, as memories create a sense of self and uniquely individualized style of encountering personal life experience in relation to attachment well-being, and then that connects with different styles of regulatory patterns and integrated patterns and regulatory protocols in the unconscious body. These roles develop with such profound independence that there's multiple persons inhabiting one body. Completely neurobiologically valid. Completely neurobiologically valid. The fact that anybody can experience themselves as one sense of a person is a complete miraculous neurobiological illusion. Because everybody on planet Earth has neural wiring filed in accordance with the social engagement system. Every person on the planet has the social engagement system with a bunch of different roles, with neural wiring from a bunch of different years. And so it's a miracle that we experience a sense of self at all. And so when there's any disruptions in the organization of this because of unfulfilled attachment needs, if there's severe and or chronic adverse experiences or traumatic events, especially in the first 15 years of life, then the social engagement system may develop with such profound independency of the neural roles that literally multiple persons inhabit one physical body. And different persons may be activated by different styles of vibrational signals. So different environments, different people, different sensory data, different life environment settings, scenarios, experiences. If you're cuddled up in bed watching a movie versus if you're really focused at work, if you're conversing with family versus if you're conversing with really close friends, if you're with people versus if you're by yourself, if you're on a vacation versus if you're in a really stressful situation. Different styles of vibrational signals are going to activate different regions of neural data, and then roles within this social engagement system will be contributing to the experience of self and life through implicit neural wiring that's creating certain styles of energetic flows within the unconscious brain and the body. Once the underlying structures of the neurobiological social engagement system have developed uniquely and different roles exist, operate, and continue expanding independently of one another, especially with adaptable consciousness condition where these roles are experiencing themselves as completely independent persons, not just distinct aspects of consciousness. Once the neurobiological social engagement system has developed in this miraculously unique fashion, then there may be the development of more alternate states of consciousness throughout life. Once attachment well-being is disrupted during early stages of neurodevelopment and neural wiring travels down these unique avenues of sculpture and alternate states of consciousness begin developing, then at later points of life, there may be the development of new alternate states of consciousness, adding to the collection of inner persons experiencing life through one miraculous body. This especially occurs during moments of high emotional intensity. So the consciousness never chooses to create a brand new person. That's not how it works. The unconscious brain and body are not like, hey, I'm going to just randomly create another person inside of me. That's not how it works. Instead, there are moments of high emotional intensity. And the way that the brain and the body process these high moments of emotional intensity, it creates, you can kind of think of it as like an ignition in the social engagement system where this new neural wiring is now kind of standing on its own instead of achieving neural connectivity with other regions of data. So let's say, for example, that there's a traumatic event during your early 20s, okay? And up until that point, there's been, a few inner persons that developed during early childhood, and then there was like 10 years where there were no new inner persons that were sculpted. It was just kind of like the original clan. But then there's a new traumatic event during your early 20s, for example. The high emotional intensity experienced during that event will ignite or spark an ignition of the gradual sculpting of a new alternate state of consciousness. And the foundation of that neural wiring then begins during that moment of high emotional intensity during the traumatic event. And then it continues to exist, operate, and expand independently of other social engagement or disengagement roles or other regions of neural data. And so it may begin here and then kind of grow and gradually develop into its own alternate state of consciousness, just depending on the styles of neural activity throughout the unfoldings of experience. Another example is a new romantic interest. If you suddenly meet someone and boom, there's this high spark of emotional intensity, that could be enough to ignite the gradual development of an alternate state of consciousness. It's moments of high emotional intensity that originally spark that ignition. And then there's this little layer of neural data that ultimately becomes an alternate state of consciousness. And so it's a high moment of emotional intensity. That information from experiential elements processed into neural data creates the foundation, and then depending on neural activations and unfoldings of personal experience, it kind of develops into its own alternate state of consciousness. And depending on those variables, it may achieve some connectivity with other regions of neural data. It may remain a small portion of neural data where there's not a lot of particulars that end up being sculpted. It may be experienced as a very unspecified state of consciousness. There may not be a lot of personal preferences that develop. It's kind of just this one aspect of self, or it may continue expanding and become a very distinctly existing inner person. But the important thing to understand here is that it's moments of high emotional intensity that spark the ignition of a new alternate state of consciousness gradually being developed within the unconscious neural wiring. So once there's this potential for roles within the social engagement system to exist, operate, and continue expanding independently of one another, then there may be the creation of new alternate states of consciousness in the infinite moments of unfoldings. But it's never a choice. The unconsciousness isn't like, okay, it's time to make a new person, and consciousness doesn't choose that. Instead, it's moments of high emotional intensity that cause experiential elements to be processed into neural wiring, or the data within the cells of our brain and our body, where memories are unconsciously connected with navigation through self and life and brain-body protocols of regulation, and then that region of neural data does not achieve connectivity with other regions within the social engagement system. During adolescence, as hormones shift and neural activity adjusts during puberty, where things are kind of just growing and expanding in new ways that the body hasn't gone through before, there may be ignitions of neural wiring that stimulate the formation of new alternate states of consciousness simply because of the way that the neural wiring is engaging. So if moments of high energetic intensity generate the creation of a new alternate state of consciousness, there may be those moments during puberty simply because of the way that the neurobiological activity is affecting emotions. And this can happen because of the way hormones and neurotransmitters, for example, are instinctively experiencing regulation. So moments during puberty have this kind of additional potential to stimulate new alternate states of consciousness just because of the unique emotions that can happen while neurobiological structures are growing and expanding during puberty or adolescence. I'd like to give an example of how this unique manifestation of consciousness may develop, and this example is from personal experience. I will not be going into specific details about alternate states of consciousness, but I simply want to demonstrate how moments of high emotional intensity in this unique order of wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system with kaleidoscope integration may manifest as experience impacts neurodevelopment. I experienced molestation at age 4. High emotional intensity of that experience ignited divergent neurodevelopment. And so then there was an alternate state of consciousness that formed carrying age-regressive tendencies affiliated with that traumatic event. That traumatic event disrupted attachment development that had already been sculpted, creating a state of consciousness who experienced neurodevelopment from infancy. That experience also sparked the ignition of neural wiring that took on characteristics and properties of the abuser. So then I had a state of consciousness that had neural wiring of a child molester. From there, other roles within the neurobiological social engagement system began developing, operating, and expanding independently of one another. One of the many instances was parent-child bonding from the perspective of the caregiver, and it was an imprint of my beautiful, incredible godsend of a mother. And then I had a state of consciousness that mimicked her characteristics and properties. Other roles continued developing independently of one another, such as mutual support and cooperation developing independently of the fold trauma response. So there was all this independent activity within my neurobiological structures. At age 6, 2 years after the original trauma, my hair was being washed by my beautiful, amazing grandmother, and soap and water got in my eyes. And that moment of high emotional intensity activated traumatic memories associated with the experience of grooming that preceded the molestation, which happened in a bathtub. And so being in the bathtub and having this moment of high emotional intensity sparked the ignition of those traumatic memories being activated. That activation provoked divergent neurodevelopment in that moment, and that sparked the ignition of another alternate state of consciousness who also experienced age-regressive tendencies and severe trauma responses. Life continued, and there were many beautiful experiences. Around age 9 and 10, in those pre-adolescent years, as my body was expanding into new stages of development, the core trauma began activating while I slept. Those activations began creating experiences of insomnia, night terrors, anxiety, dissociation, and other implicit battles. Those moments of high emotional intensity gradually cultivated a flight stress response associated with physical intimacy. So there's a social engagement and disengagement role kind of coupled together, a stress response with a role within the neurobiological social engagement system. That role ended up developing hypersexualized tendencies to cope with the unconscious sexual trauma. And that state of consciousness experienced complete connection with the body, but in a very hypersexualized way. And then there was a fight stress response that began developing, and this state of consciousness had complete disconnection with the body to such a profound degree that they associated with being a male rather than a female. And it was a way for the unconscious neural wiring to cope with the traumatic stress. Along with these roles, there were several social engagement roles that developed traditionally. Mutual support and cooperation being one example, rest and restitution being another example. Then there was another alternate state of consciousness that developed associated with emotional intimacy role within neurobiological structures. All of these regions of neural data developed, operated, and continue expanding independently of one another, creating experiences of alternate states of consciousness within my neurobiological structures. During early high school, battles intensified and various experiences sparked the ignition of two new alternate states of consciousness that both carried a fight-stress response. This created the original clan of states of consciousness within my neurobiological structures. Then, during adulthood, especially in 2014 and 2017, fresh traumatic experiences sparked the ignition of new alternate states of consciousness. Altogether, I experienced life with adaptable consciousness condition from 1997 to 2020, from the original core trauma to the point of healing that original core trauma. Now, here I am in 2021, and I no longer experience life with adaptable consciousness condition. But let me explain what that actually means. What does it really mean to go from living with multiple inner persons to experiencing life as one person? What does that actually mean? Okay, now that we're looking at the neuroscience of stuff, we can really uncover the truth about what this means. I still have all of the exact same parts of consciousness. Okay, I still have all the same parts of my consciousness or my energetic self-essence. Okay, so all the same parts of my consciousness. And I still have all the same roles within my neurobiological social engagement system carrying implicit wiring from personal experience throughout the past 28 years. Okay, so I still have all the neural data sculpted from personal experiences. All of that's still there. I still have all of that inside my brain-body system. But here's what's changed. There is now neural connectivity between all the different years and all the different roles within my neurobiological social engagement system. So memory data from age 4 and age 10 and age 20 and age 25 can now connect. Neural wiring affiliated with stress responses and social disengagement, and neural wiring affiliated with social engagement roles like rest and restitution and mutual support and cooperation and physical well-being and health and emotional health and well-being. All these different roles relating with neural wiring as memories connect with attachments and brain-body activity. All of that neural wiring can now talk to one another unconsciously. So instead of my parts of consciousness experiencing life through independent states of engagement within my neurobiological structures, all of my parts of consciousness experience self and life through one unified state of engagement. Getting to this point was no easy task. Altogether, I've spent over 30,000 hours manually rewiring my brain-body systems. Getting to a place where life is experienced through one state of consciousness is not actually the goal of healing with ACC. That happened to be where my personal journey was able to lead me to. But experiencing life through one fluid state of consciousness is not necessarily the healing journey goal. Integration of states of consciousness is not the top priority for healing. I kind of mentioned this a little bit later on, so stay tuned. This just happened to be where my personal healing journey led me to. I used to experience identity and life through multiple states of unconscious engagement because neural wiring within roles of my neurobiological social engagement system existed, operated, and continued expanding independently of one another. Now, all of that neural wiring connects and roles within my neurobiological social engagement system consistently achieve abilities to connect, collaborate, and communicate throughout the miracles of this brain-body system. Within adaptable consciousness condition, there's two things I really want to focus on. The first is neural wiring of memories contributing to identity and experience. And the second is the organization of integrative patterns and regulatory protocols throughout the brain-body system. So let's look at the first one. Our sense of self, who I believe myself to be in relation to my inner and outer reality, and my processing of life experience, how different pieces of stimulus become a personal sense of experience. Like you might have a cupcake and you might have a tongue, but that does not create a personal experience on its own. Instead, it's this process of eating the cupcake, sensations of the taste and texture of the cupcake being translated through the tongue to a brain in accordance with implicit neural wiring that then generates and projects a particular style of experience, and then there's personal experience. So you don't just get personal experience from the outside world. It's this miraculous process of vibrational signals being translated through our neural wiring. So the way that we encounter personal experience has to do with the way that memories are filed inside of us. And so if different persons inside of one body have access to different regions of neural wiring, then their sense of self is going to be different. And this shows up in different ways. So if this person has access to different explicit autobiographical memories than these other persons, then how they perceive their background to be, how they understand what has occurred in their life is going to be different. This person might be like, yeah, I went to college and I graduated with a degree and I have that understanding because activation of me connects with the activation of these memories. But if this is operating independently of these other persons, then this other person is going to be like, I never went to college. I never went to college. I have no memory of that. I have never gone to school a day in my life. And it's because of the way that memories are organized. Neural wiring is organized in the social engagement system and being activated, contributing to life experience. So there may be different sensations of autobiographical information. Then there's implicit emotional memories. So different states of consciousness will encounter different styles of emotions and sensations and feelings and instinctive feeling responses to things. This state of consciousness might be like, I'm angry all the time and all I know how to feel is rage. And it's because of the implicit emotional memories that they're connected with. This state of consciousness might be like, I feel sad and lonely all the time and I don't know how to feel anything else. And it's because of the implicit emotional memories they're connected with. And so you might have different styles of sensations. This state of consciousness might experience a flood of somatic sensations while other states might not. Because of the implicit emotional memory data that these different persons inside of one body are connected with. And then you have implicit procedural memories. And this is where things get especially miraculously complex. Implicit procedural memories affect 80% or more of decision making unconsciously. And so you have this state of consciousness connected with this implicit procedural memory data, and they have a certain way of going about and making decisions instinctively. And then you have this state of consciousness, and it has connection with completely different implicit procedural memory data. The way they move about making choices is completely different from this other person, even though it's happening in one body. And if each state of consciousness is connected with different implicit procedural memory data, then instinctive styles of going through decision-making processes, everything from choosing food to managing time and in the day to big and small choices. Where do you live? Who do you talk to? What do you do for a job? How do you respond to things? How do you prioritize? How do you move about your day? What kind of habits do you have? When do you wake up in the morning? When do you go to bed at night? What's your process for getting ready for bed at night? How do you wake up in the morning? What's your morning routine? All of the decisions that we go through in our lives come from implicit procedural memory data. And so if all of these different inner persons are connected with different implicit procedural memory data, then the unconscious automated style of moving through decision-making tendencies and processes, or even having abilities to make a choice at all, are going to be completely different because they're connected with different regions of neural wiring that are creating these abilities unconsciously. And this is really important to understand because when we look at the surface of experiencing life with multiple inner persons, there may not be an ability to understand life experience. But when we can understand the neurobiological structure that's creating these miraculously unique experiences, there's this fresh, renewed vantage point for understanding what's happening. Like, oh, it makes sense that I'm having a hard time choosing what to eat for breakfast because that ability unconsciously comes from implicit procedural memory data. And there's a bunch of different persons connected with that information in a bunch of different ways. And so we're all different persons inside of this one body are getting different pieces of information, even though it's just one small choice. And having this renewed sense of understanding can open up a lot of doors for healing, compassion, and acceptance and embrace. And then there can be new strategies for how to move about things. Because when you understand it's coming from the unconscious brain-body wiring, it just creates space for a shift in how you approach battles or challenges that might arise in these kinds of situations. The other important element of understanding how different states of consciousness will be connected with different regions of implicit neural data is understanding how this can contribute to unique experiences of implicit battles. As alternate states of consciousness experience unique styles of unconscious navigation regarding self and life stemming from implicit neural projections, they may encounter unique styles of disrupted navigation regarding self and life. And this may manifest as a variety of implicit battles. And the miraculous aspect about this is that different states of consciousness may encounter their own unique styles of implicit health challenges. Some parts of consciousness or one inner person may experience this region of neural data, filed in accordance with the social engagement system. Okay, so there's this region of neural data experienced by these parts of consciousness that creates this inner person. And then there's this region of neural data experienced by these parts of consciousness that experience life as this person. Okay, but it's all happening in the same body, but it's these different regions of neural wiring creating uniquely individualized styles of life experience based on the distinct, unique, independent development of roles within the neurobiological social engagement system. Okay, so if this person experiences this region of neural wiring, these implicit memories might carry action patterns associated with substance use, addiction, or dependency. But then these other states of consciousness are not connected with this neural wiring. So these inner persons won't have an issue with substances, but this inner person will. And this inner person is connected with this region of neural data, experiencing life through this implicit neural wiring. And these implicit memories have projections that create action patterns of skin picking. Okay, then this person, when this person is activated through neurobiological engagement occurring unconsciously, then there will be battles with dermatillomania. But these inner persons won't experience that because they're not connected with this region of implicit neural wiring. So as different states of consciousness or different aspects of self-essence are experiencing distinct regions of neural activations filed in accordance with the neurobiological social engagement system where different roles are existing, operating, and expanding independently of one another, then different inner persons or different states of consciousness may encounter distinct, unique, and separate or independent styles of implicit health challenges, manifesting as battles with mental, emotional, relational, behavioral, spiritual, or action patterned challenges while moving through life. And all of this occurs unconsciously, automatically, based on the styles of implicit neural wiring and activation. So the way that experience has sculpted the internal wiring and structures, and then the way that vibrational signals activate and engage that unconscious data. And these create automated projections of sensations and action patterns that may manifest through unique battles. And it's important to understand the neurobiological structure of this, because if you try addressing the substance abuse issues while this person is fronting, then you're not going to get very far, because this isn't the person who experiences that battle. It's this person over here that has that challenge. And similarly, if this person is forward and this region of neural data is activated and you try addressing dermatillomania, you're not going to get very far, because you're not working with the implicit neural wiring that is generating that battle, and you're not addressing the parts of consciousness who are experiencing those neural projections. And so it's very helpful to understand the neurobiological structures of these unique experiences, because that healing can be approached much more effectively. The second extraordinarily significant aspect about adaptable consciousness condition, or living with multiple inner persons, is understanding how this unique manifestation of consciousness impacts brain-body operations beyond direct perception and immediate awareness. So imagine that every element of brain-body activity ranges along an energetic spectrum. You got brain hemispheres ranging from left to right. You have the triune brain ranging from the forebrain neocortex, midbrain limbic system, and hindbrain reptilian brain. Okay, you got this energetic spectrum of engagement. Imagine your autonomic nervous system along an energetic spectrum of engagement. You've got high energy dysregulation, low energy dysregulation, and then regulated in kind of the middle of this spectrum. Imagine the central nervous system, the somatic nervous system, the enteric nervous system, brain waves, respiration, circulation. Imagine every single element of brain-body engagement, muscular engagement, ranging along an energetic spectrum from relaxed or flaccid to tense or really engaged and disengaged muscles. Imagine all the different brain-body operations ranging along an energetic spectrum. Okay, now imagine that the social engagement system ranges along a spectrum as well. We've got all these different roles of engagement and then all these different roles of disengagement. Okay, now imagine that these spectrums are all stacked up on top of each other. We've got the social engagement system, all these different roles, and neural wiring from all these different ears. And then we've got the circulatory system, the respiratory system, the autonomic nervous system, the central nervous system, the somatic nervous system, the enteric nervous system, muscular engagement. We have all these different systems, okay? So imagine these spectrums just all stacked up on top of each other. Now, what happens when divergent neurodevelopment causes roles within the social engagement system of neurobiological structures to develop independently of one another? Okay, so you got the social engagement system, you got this role, 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 and then you've got different years. So then you've got this role from this year and this role from this year, okay? And they've all developed independently of one another. Then that comes down and impacts all of these systems. So now this role connects with all of these energies of the brain-body activity. This role connects with all of these energies in the brain-body activity, etc., etc., etc. Then what happens is every brain-body system has these different energetic states of engagement that operate independently of one another. The endocrine system, respiration, all of these different miraculous unconscious activities enabling us to be this miraculous physical person. All of the systems have these different energetic modalities of operation, and they're all operating independently of one another. Let's take breathing as one example. With every inhale, the sympathetic end is being engaged of the autonomic nervous system. With every exhale, the opposite end, the low energy end, the restorative state end, the relaxed state end of the nervous system is being activated. So with every single breath we breathe, both ends of this energetic spectrum of autonomic engagement are being activated. But what happens when the ability to inhale and the ability to exhale can't talk to one another because they're connected with completely different regions of neural wiring according to the filing of memory data in relation to attachment well-being that subsequently connect with different modalities of brain-body operation and regulation. Then you get breathing problems and you don't know why. You don't know why because it's so deeply unconscious. If every inhale is this end of the spectrum of autonomic engagement and exhales here, they're connected with different social engagement roles within the organization of neurobiological wiring, and these roles have not developed a neural connectivity because of disrupted attachment well-being, because of traumatic stress or adverse experiences. Then the body is literally like, I don't know how to breathe really well. But it doesn't have a way to tell the conscious mind that. And so then the body goes into all of these different states of trying to survive, not being able to breathe. And the conscious mind has no idea about it. But of course, it's going to affect personal experience. If you can't breathe well, it's going to affect so many different things happening in the brain and the way it impacts thoughts and feelings, and the body and the way it impacts energy levels and feelings of safety or engagement or all these different things. But the causality is not going to be obvious. It's not going to be clearly evident where the roots of these battles are stemming from. And if you can't understand where the battle comes from, then you can't heal it. Like, you can't heal all of these mental experiences if you don't understand the neurophysiological causalities behind them. If someone comes in and says, I'm hearing voices, well, where are the voices coming from and why? If there isn't a neuroscientific insight, then of course healing will feel impossible. Because when you're hearing voices, the voices are not the problem. Hearing voices isn't the problem. It's never the problem. The surface, superficial, obvious symptom is never the problem. And healing cannot transpire until the actual core causality within neurobiological wiring and activity is effectively identified and addressed. Living with this unique order of neural wiring, especially when there's multiple states of consciousness and not just some discontinuity or some disconnect between roles within the social engagement system, but when there's multiple persons literally inhabiting one physical body, the most miraculous thing in the entire universe, if you ask me. When this happens, though, there could be all kinds of physical health challenges that manifest in unique ways and are not easily identifiable in terms of, what's happening, why is it happening, and how do I help this miraculous vessel achieve healing in these unique experiences. And so there might be difficulties with circulation. Okay, so if you've got the circulatory system ranging along this energetic spectrum, you have all these different modalities of operation in the circulatory system. But the body and the brain know how to regulate and communicate within itself and with other systems based on how it's wired. And so these systems in the circulatory system, these different modalities of engagement, only know how to operate and communicate with one another in relation to the development of the social engagement system. Because experience teaches our brain and our body how to do its stuff. It's got like this basic blueprint of like, you're a body, you have a heart that beats and things that flow, and experience is going to teach you the rest. But when that experience involves traumatic stress, whether it's adverse childhood experiences that create chronic stress responses, or one traumatic event or multiple traumatic events, when this happens, then our brain and our body are taught very unique lessons basically. And the brain and the body have regulatory patterns and protocols that may not effectively achieve complete homeostasis or optimal well-being on an instinctive, innate, unconscious, automated level. And so our goal here is to help retrain this beautiful body to know how to be its best self. And that means working with these different systems. So circulatory system got these different modalities. That those unconscious regulatory patterns are connected with the social engagement system. So if you've got all these different roles that have developed independently of one another, then these different modalities in the circulatory system are going to exist, operate, and expand independently of one another. And then you may have difficulties feeling the skin. There may be difficulties with blood flow. You may get all kinds of different difficulties in different systems, the circulation, the somatic nervous system, different just everyday things about having effective mind-body connectivity, effective regulation, effective communication within and throughout these different miraculous modalities of existence. Being a human is a complete, extravagantly dynamic, profound miracle. Just being alive is a miracle. And so when you have all these different systems, and they connect with the social engagement system, that is what teaches them how to energetically function and communicate and regulate. And all these different roles, these different regions of neurowiring don't have connection, then all of the different brain-body modalities of operation don't have connection within themselves and with one another. And this can manifest in a variety of unique ways and pose a variety of unique health challenges. Among the infinite potentials exists brain hemispheric imbalances, cranial nerve dysfunction, digestive issues, and imbalances with hormones and neurotransmitters. As a personal example, for several years, every time I ate food, which was multiple times a day, and this happened for years, every time I ate food, the core trauma from early childhood became unconsciously activated. This sexual trauma was trapped in my enteric nervous system. So every time I ate, the implicit memory fragments were unconsciously activated. That projected extraordinarily painful and uncomfortable body sensations from that event over 2 decades ago. Simultaneously, it did all of these complex neurobiological processes, and these took me years to figure out, but once I figured out the neuroscience of it, I was able to validate my experiences and create new healing modalities that reached what was actually happening inside of my brain and my body. So eating engaged certain regions of activity within my enteric nervous system that activated implicit memories from that core trauma, projected painful, uncomfortable body sensations. Because that was connected with information gathered during early childhood, it activated age regression. And so then my left brain hemisphere shut off. I no longer had access to my language center, so I couldn't speak and I couldn't effectively process language that was being received. Language centers totally shut down, left brain totally inaccessible, right brain became overly amplified, so different sensations of experience were very pronounced. Prefrontal cortex kind of shut down because of a stress response in my autonomic nervous system. So my autonomic nervous system went into a fold trauma response, and then I was experiencing bradycardia, where my heart rate went down to like 40, 50 beats per minute instead of being at a regulated space. And I started to experience oxygen deprivation, where my oxygen intake went down to 85 to 93%, which is in a critical period, rather than being at 95 to 100%, which is what happens when it's regulated and being healthy. So oxygen deprivation, bradycardia, left brain inaccessibility, increased right brain activation, prefrontal cortex was disengaged, my autonomic nervous system was dysregulated, so then I wasn't able to effectively digest food while I was eating, which produced a bunch of other health challenges like fluctuations with my energy levels and the ability for my immune system to effectively kick in and all this other stuff. And my enteric nervous system was dysregulated. It was all of these unique things because eating engaged a region of my enteric nervous system where core childhood trauma was trapped because of the way the enteric nervous system connects with the sexual organs and the digestive organs. And so that process, that nervous system activation, created all these very unique styles of neurobiological activity, creating unique experiences of consciousness. And it all had to do with this unique neurodevelopment that was surviving traumatic stress. The unique order within neural wiring experienced in ACC, or adaptable consciousness condition, poses an infinite myriad of potential health challenges because different regions of neural wiring connected with various roles within the social engagement system do not have instinctive abilities for communicative connectivity and effective collaboration. And so all these different systems within the body cannot communicate within themselves or with one another effectively, and it can produce all kinds of unique experiences and physical health challenges. The super cool part about this unique neural wiring is how alternate states of consciousness are each going to connect with a specific style of brain-body activity. This is where the super miraculous gets even more mega magical. You may have one state of consciousness that has complete access to all regulatory processes. And then another person inside of the same body might not have access to the left brain hemisphere, might not have instinctive regulatory processes within the enteric nervous system, might not achieve natural regulation and connectivity throughout the somatic and central nervous systems. Different states of consciousness are going to connect with different regions and styles of automated activity within the endocrine system. So in this one state of consciousness might have lots of testosterone automatically, and then this other state of consciousness might have lots of some other hormone and neurotransmitter, and it's totally different, but it's all automatic, and it's all unconscious, and it's all miraculous. You got the spectrum of the left and right brain hemispheres. Some states of consciousness might have lots and lots of left brain activity. Some states of consciousness might have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of right brain activity. And some states might actually have connectivity within them both. But more often than not, a lot of states are going to have one brain hemisphere dominantly engaging because they're not able to communicatively connect. And you may even have completely separate experiences of consciousness in the two brain hemispheres. These parts of consciousness are like, what's up? I'm in the right brain. And these parts of consciousness are like, what's up? I'm in the left brain. And they're totally distinct and unique because there's literally multiple states of consciousness, multiple states of personhood flowing simultaneously through one body. It's literally the human species attempting to evolve. It is the most miraculous occurrence on the planet. Recognizing these unique styles of brain-body activity can really provide aid along the everyday healing journey through life, from understanding experiences of consciousness to providing healing potentials for unique experiences. For example, what happens when you have a state of consciousness that doesn't have access to the brain's language centers in the left brain hemisphere? You just suddenly can't talk. You suddenly can't think through language. You suddenly can't write. What happens when your brain, automatically, unconsciously, beyond all awareness, is not able to access language centers? And so in unique experiences like this, it's helpful to develop some effective healing strategies while simultaneously addressing these parts of the brain that need healing. So coping might look like learning sign language, or at least a few basic signs and teaching them to a few people who are frequently in your life. Maybe you learn like 5 different signs about things you might need or emotions you might be feeling, and you learn those 5 signs and you teach them to the people you live with and your doctor and your best friend or something. And then in those situations where you're not able to physically speak, you have some tool and plan in place so it's not so scary and you can move through it with grace and ease. If you're able to read and write but not speak, maybe you carry around paper and a pen and you have the opportunity or the option to communicate that way when you need to. And then simultaneously recognizing, hey, this is something unique that's happening in my brain. It's not just in my mind, it's something in this beautiful brain-body system. Then you can create or sculpt or explore healing potentials for, okay, how do I help this left brain hemisphere be more engaged? How do I help my Broca's area heal? How do I help my left and right brain hemispheres achieve connectivity? And there's lots of different healing modalities in the world, but you can't get there until you know what you're trying to heal. And so when there's selective mutism, for example, it's not the selective mutism that needs healing, right? It's the reason that that's happening. And the reason that's happening is because there's these language centers in the left brain hemisphere and they're having a hard time operating. So how can we help the left brain hemisphere? And addressing selective mutism from that neurobiological angle expands healing potentials while validating the experiences. The other way this information is helpful in regards to adaptable consciousness condition is we can create healing potentials when there's one body experiencing life with multiple inner persons or alternate states of consciousness. We can help provide healing potentials by working with these different brain-body systems. For example, if you work with the central nervous system directly, and you try to improve connectivity, communication, and regulation in the central nervous system, and you focus there, while you expand neuroconnectivity and unconscious regulatory patterns in the central nervous system, you're expanding the energetic flows along this spectrum. But all of these spectrums are connected. All the different brain-body operations are all connected with the social engagement system. So when you help this system connect, you're covertly helping all of the systems connect, including the social engagement system where everything started. And so when you work with the central nervous system and you focus on expanding regulation and communication here, it's going to help all these other systems and the neural wiring of the social engagement system indirectly. And so it's really, really helpful to understand the neuroscience of these experiences because it opens so many more doors for healing potentials. It's important to know that healing just means becoming more of who we truly are. Because when we help these different systems connect, these parts of our consciousness can be more of their true selves and not get stuck in health challenges or feel limited by automated styles of brain-body activity. And all aspects of consciousness, all parts of self-essence then are able to embrace themselves and life in a much more expansive and happy, hope-filled manner. I explore the topic of integration in a later thesis statement, so stay tuned for particulars about that. But just to mention it briefly here, the healing journey with adaptable consciousness condition is never about integrating inner persons. Never. Parts of consciousness do not need to integrate. Instead, neural wiring integrates. The brain-body regulatory patterns of connectivity and protocols integrate. Parts of consciousness just come home. Parts of self-essence celebrate homecomings to each other and to the present moment. Integration is not about parts of consciousness or inner persons. Integration addresses the brain and the body. Parts do not integrate. Parts just come home. The unconscious brain and body are what may experience some form of integration. While adaptable consciousness condition affects all brain-body operations, I'm talking all of them, nerves, muscles, regulatory flows, all the nervous systems, every brain lobe in each hemisphere, all the brain-body operations, my theory is that a lot of this originates in the brainstem, where implicit neural wiring interacts with cranial nerves and affects everything from facial features to decision-making tendencies and abilities. In my research, every avenue that I was exploring kept leading back to the brainstem. So my theory is that adaptable consciousness condition dominantly, primarily, or prominently originates in the brainstem. Among my many ideas about adaptable consciousness condition is that this condition poses the potential to experience chronic oxygen deprivation. And there's a few variables that go into this. I don't believe it happens all the time, but I believe that the condition itself poses an extraordinary risk for the potential of it. And having awareness of that and exploring that possibility can help expand healing potentials. So my theory is that there's two reasons that this may happen. One is kind of what I mentioned, where the respiratory system ranges along an energetic spectrum of engagement. And if there's difficulties in communication within the autonomic nervous system, for example, then inhales and exhales might not be lining up. There just might not be this instinctive unconscious ability to take in all that oxygen and exhale all the extra toxins out of the body. And when that happens, different things can suffer inside. So having healthy oxygen flow is really important. And so if there's not communication within these systems, there might just be unconscious regulatory patterns that don't instinctively know how to effectively transport and flow oxygen. My other theory is that when living with adaptable consciousness condition, there's frequently chronic activations of the traumatic fold response within the social disengagement system. And when this is chronically activated, even beyond awareness, you might not consciously know that this is going on. Maybe it's being activated with other stuff. When this happens, it can result in chronic oxygen deprivation because the brain and the body are shutting everything down, trying to survive. But the body doesn't know that it doesn't need to be in that survival state anymore. And when this happens over and over again, or there's a constant state of it, then there may be oxygen deprivation covertly impacting life experience and health behind the scenes of what we consciously know about. Please note that breathing issues may be linked with a variety of other health challenges, such as subluxated or partially dislocated ribs. There may be a variety of reasons why breathing might be difficult. This is just one possible explanation. And so exploring this potential can help expand healing. For me personally, being on oxygen therapy was a really big game changer. Over 700 hours of oxygen therapy later, and my body has been reprogrammed, so now it knows how to breathe super mega well. And let me tell you, breathing is the best feeling. And so when there's not an ability for there to be oxygen flow, everything else is going to have a hard time communicating. And so one important idea is that oxygen therapy can really help individuals in any type of trauma recovery and individuals living with unique experiences of consciousness where different brain-body systems might not have the opportunity to effectively connect with everything going on, or there might be chronic stress responses that reduce abilities for natural oxygen flow. When roles within the social engagement system develop and operate independently of one another, especially with adaptable consciousness condition where the autonomy of these roles is at its maximum capacity, there may be chronic cases of dissociation. Why? Dissociation is all about neural disconnectivity. So memory data is how we navigate our sense of identity and life experience. And having these unconscious associations helps everything connect. All the experiences in our life, all our thoughts and feelings, all the different regulatory patterns in our brain and our body, all the different abilities for thought and perception and connection and association and familiarity. It's all about unconscious neural associations. But when there's neural disassociations, there's dissociative experiences, basically. So you got all this different neural wiring organized in the social engagement system, but then you got all these roles operating with complete amnesic barriers, okay? Complete amnesic barriers. This neural wiring doesn't even know that all of this neural wiring exists. When this is engaged, this is completely inaccessible. And there may be different levels of severity. Some states of consciousness may have some co-consciousness or abilities to kind of interject into each other's neural connectivity, but a lot of times there's amnesic barriers. And then when this role is activated, it's activated independently and it can't get to any of that other neural wiring. So when there's neural disconnectivity, or there's a lack of associations within this implicit neural data, then it may produce a variety of unique dissociative experiences. And dissociation ranges along a huge unfathomably vast spectrum of experiences. During my case studies these past few years, I identified over 50 types of unique dissociative experiences. And so I actually wrote an expose on dissociative experiences of consciousness, where I identified 10 dissociative experiences that exist and already have terminology existing in the world. 10 unique dissociative experiences where there's already terminology to describe them. But then I kept going and I identified 47 unique dissociative experiences. And just for the sake of creation, I gave them names. So there's all this information in my expose on dissociative states of consciousness, and you can find out more about that in the video description. My expose on dissociative states of consciousness also presents the spectrum of lucidity. Just as dissociation ranges along a spectrum, lucidity ranges along a spectrum. And lucidity is that ability to have complete conscious presence, which means complete conscious presence with neural activity and brain-body regulatory patterns, and complete conscious presence with the immediate moment of physical reality and the immediacy of this surrounding reality. So there's a lot of connections happening that enable lucidity. And lucidity ranges along a spectrum, ranging from 1 to 10 or 0 to 10. While creating language for unique experiences of consciousness, I gradually created something that I call the spectrum of dissociative states of consciousness. And it was quite a journey to create this. Many months of identifying my experiences and looking at neuroscience and kind of figuring out how they kind of all fit together to create unique dissociative states. The spectrum of dissociative states ranges along a spectrum of 9 different states in relation to energetic engagement of the brain-body system, especially associated with the polyvagal theory. There's 3 restorator states or low energy states, 3 normal states or regulated states, and 3 protector states or high energy states. And using this spectrum of dissociative states was a huge part of my healing. Being able to recognize that these states of my consciousness were experiencing these specific styles of brain-body activity provided a lot of healing validation, and it profoundly expanded healing potentials. In particular, for example, I discovered that restorator states need an increase of stimulus to expand connection with the world. In contrast, protector states need to decrease energetic engagement or styles of incoming stimulus or vibrational signals and increase connectivity with the inner world. And applying these insights, increasing stimulus and engagement with the outside world during restorator states and decreasing stimulus, decreasing external engagement and increasing internal connection, these protector states, and then the regulated states, you can kind of get stuff done or you might not be able to in these other states. Applying these insights was like a profound transformative healing tool that I was able to create during my case study work that I didn't have access to before. So I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to learn this, and I'm really excited to share it. Understanding the neuroscience of social disengagement roles is also really helpful along this healing journey while transforming my experiences of consciousness from the inside out. So I created this spectrum of traumatic response to kind of convey some of these ideas. Recognizing these different stress responses helped recognize neurobiological activity and distinguish that reality from my aspects of consciousness. Because my parts of consciousness were never the trauma responses or the stress responses. Those states of neurobiological activity and engagement were happening unconsciously because of how experience had affected my neural wiring. But that was always separate and distinct from me and my essence and my parts of consciousness. And so learning to recognize these distinct stress responses or roles of the social disengagement system, and then responding to those in distinction from the parts of me who were experiencing them, also proved very helpful along this healing journey and was a point of focus during my case study explorations. As if all of this wasn't fascinating and miraculous enough, one of the most extravagantly profound points of my work, both with my self-healing and with my case study explorations, was unconscious abilities for self-recognition. So when you look in a mirror, or when you look at a picture of yourself, the ability to associate the person that you see with the person that you are directly stems from neural connectivity. So unique neural wiring of the social engagement system, especially when it reaches a point like kaleidoscope integration, resulting in adaptable consciousness condition, or living with multiple inner persons, the ability for self-recognition is going to be uniquely experienced in different states of consciousness. Let's say, for example, you have neural connectivity or neural data, neural wiring, however you want to phrase it, this implicit neural information that recognizes the person you were when you were 9 years old, let's say. And then you've got this neural data that recognizes you when you were 14 years old, let's say. And then you've got this neural data that recognizes you when you were 21 years old. And then you've got this neural data that recognizes you here and now in your late 20s, early 30s, or wherever you're at. So you've got all these different aspects of neural wiring that connect with unique stages of self-recognition, because the brain and the body grow, right? Like who you looked like or who you were, or how you physically appeared was different from ages 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, right? So, but how do you recognize that each one of those is still you? Right? Like you don't look at a picture of you from 5 and you're like, I don't know who that person is. And then you look at a picture of you from 15, you're like, that's definitely not me. Where does this ability to unconsciously recognize ourselves come from? It comes from this neural wiring. So what happens then when you have this neural data that's existing and operating independently of one another? Different states of consciousness are going to experience self-recognition differently from one another. One state of consciousness might look at a picture of the body when it was 5 years old and say, that's me. One state of consciousness might look at pictures from when the body was 10 years old, 9 years old, and say, no, that's me. And these different states of consciousness won't necessarily recognize these other self aspects because of how parts of consciousness are automatically experiencing distinct regions of neural wiring independently from one another, or autonomously from one another. So all this neural data exists, but how it's being accessed, retrieved, and applied, and then how experience of these activations and experience from the outside world during the activations is causing neural connectivity to shift and shape shift. Memories are constantly shape shifting. Every moment rewires our brain and our body, and every night past data and new data is undergoing even more reconstruction. And so all this neural wiring is constantly being rewired in very covert and miraculous ways. And so things could even become more independent from one another. Time might cause these regions to expand in their independence from each other. And so then you've got these different states of consciousness that recognize the body from different time periods of life. And so what happens then, if a state of consciousness is being activated and they're connected with neural wiring from age 5, they're not going to be able to recognize the body as an adult, because they're not able to connect with that neural information that's allowing for translations of personal reality. And then they're going to look at pictures or maybe look at the body in the mirror and just be like, what? What's going on? That's clearly not me. But it's all very unconscious. So this might manifest as an inexplicable anxiety. And you don't even know what's happening. There's no words for it. There's no way to describe what's even happening because the unconscious body is not able to recognize itself. And then parts of consciousness are experiencing those projections, but they don't know it. They don't know, I'm feeling anxious because my unconscious body isn't able to access neural data that enables self-recognition in this moment. Like, that's not going to be accessible to the conscious mind. You can't get there. You can't understand why this stuff's happening automatically. And so in these experiences, there may just be uncomfortable somatic sensations, and you don't know where they're coming from. Or there may just be a general sense of anxiety and dissociation, and you don't really know why or what to do about it or where it's coming from or why it's happening or what's going on. There's all kinds of unique experiences that can come with this. And so this can result in a variety of profoundly unique experiences. When you look in a mirror, for example, at different angles as different pieces of neural data are being accessed, you may see the face of a child. Or you may see the face of an adult that you don't recognize. Or you may see someone completely different and you don't know who it is. Or you may not be able to know that there's a face there at all because the neural data translating reality doesn't have enough connections to be like, hey, that's a face you're looking at. There's so many unique experiences that can happen. One of the hundreds of unique experiences I encountered doing my self-healing and my case study work was that half of my face became completely disconnected from my body. And after I was able to break past the fear of it and be unconditionally present with the experience, it was just profound to very literally, very physically, very scientifically, validly experience a visual sensation of half of my face leaving my body, coming way out here and being way down here. Half my face was over here. It wasn't up here. And it was not psychosis. It was not anything like that. It was because the neurobiological activations of implicit data translating abstract life into specifics of personal reality did not have enough connections to produce a traditional experience of self-recognition. And so there was a very unique experience of self-recognition where half my face was just hanging out over there. And, that was cool. Like, I got used to that. I'm like, all right, my face is just, it's doing its thing and it's over there and that's okay. Because I'm still here and I'm still me no matter what. So that's cool. My brain's doing something unique. That's miraculous. All right, I'm going to flow with it. And just being able to recognize that this is something the brain is doing. And it's not just some illusion that the mind is creating, but it's because our ability to recognize ourselves, to look in a mirror and say, I understand that that's me. I am a me inside my reality. I am a physical body me, and I am a me that engages with the outside world. And these three realities unconsciously automatically connect because of miracles of neurobiological activity. When that is understood, then these unique experiences may also be extravagantly, extensively, profoundly understood as well. If you look in a mirror and you cannot recognize yourself, or you can only recognize a half of your face, or you can only recognize yourself from an angle, or you recognize you from 10 years ago, but not the you from today, there can be an understanding this is coming from unique neural activation because roles within the social engagement system do not have instinctive neural connectivity because of how traumatic stress or disrupted attachment well-being has impacted my neurobiological development. And recognizing this is really important, and providing validation for these unique experiences of consciousness is really important. These insights are also helpful because then you can start to recognize what regions of neural data are being activated. If you look in a mirror and you recognize who you were from high school, for example, then neural wiring that was sculpted during those years and never achieved neural connectivity with other information is being activated. And even just having these insights can help provide understanding for how parts of consciousness are experiencing themselves in life and expand healing potentials by addressing what's actually happening in the neurobiology if and when it happens to present health challenges. While some states of consciousness may uniquely recognize the physical body from different time periods of life, other states of consciousness may experience zero affiliation with the physical self at all. And this can create a variety of unique experiences of consciousness. For example, the unconsciousness may develop new associations affiliated with a different type of body. This is basically an unconscious form of a trauma response where it doesn't feel safe to be associated with the body. And so to make sense of it, the unconsciousness develops neural data that explains a new association connecting the sense of self with an alternate style of experiencing the physical human form. This may manifest, for example, as a Caucasian female feeling unconsciously associated with the physical body of an Asian male. And this is all occurring unconsciously from neurobiological miracles that are adapting to survive indescribably severe traumatic stress trapped within the neurobiological structures that unconsciously, automatically generate our uniquely individualized styles of personal experience. Our sense of self, conscious and unconscious, related with our inner sense of a mind and with our unconscious sense of a body, our internal reality, our external reality, and the connectivity between them. All of it comes from the unconscious neural wiring within our brain and our body. And if that neural wiring feels compromised from traumatic stress, it may evolutionarily adapt in very miraculously unique ways. And this is just one way that might manifest. A state of consciousness may not feel associated with being a physical human being at all. Instead of there being an unconscious, unique association with a different type of body, there may be unconscious associations with no body at all. And then the person may not feel like a real human being. That can manifest through a variety of unique styles of dissociative experiences. Or there may be unconscious associations with an object, for example. A state of consciousness could experience its sense of self as a tree, for example. And this completely stems from very valid neural wiring where these unique regions of neural data, structured and filed in accordance with the social engagement system, are evolutionarily adapting to survive traumatic stress. So for example, there may be a social disengagement role, and this unique neural wiring, this region of data, has a lot of traumatic stress memories, and it exists, operates, and expands independently of other regions. So all these inner persons don't have to cope with this. And it's very miraculous and very, 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 very courageous of this state of consciousness to be completely taking this on and having the responsibility of this pain so that other persons can function without being affected by this. But subsequently, this region of neural data may generate a sense of self that is not associated with being a physical human being because of how the traumatic stress has compromised a sense of self within this specific region of neural data. And then there may be unconscious associations with an object or with nothing at all, and there is no sense of self in existence. Regardless of automated sensations of a sense of self, every state of consciousness is unconditionally worthy of acceptance, compassion, and empowered connection to infinite healing potentials. Every state of consciousness is unconditionally valid, and healing is always possible so that more aspects of self can be liberated into the fullness of who they truly are and can be. Another beautifully miraculous aspect about experiencing a sense of self is unconscious associations with a name. So how do I know that I am Kristin Karina Windsor? How is that an understanding that I can instinctively connect with? Well, it wasn't there for a while, so I got a chance to learn all about it. Our ability to associate our sense of self with a name comes from, you guessed it, implicit neural wiring. So let's say there's the social engagement system, right? And there's all these different roles existing, operating, expanding independently of one another. Let's say these three regions of neural data connect with the birth name of the physical body. But then there's all of these other roles, other distinct regions of neural wiring that don't have connectivity with that information. Then they're not going to associate their sense of self with that name. So the body may, for example, have a name of Kristin, and some persons may feel like that's their name. They may write the name and say, yes, I recognize that name. They may hear the name and say, yes, I respond to that name. There's a sense of unconscious familiarity or unconscious association. But then there may be these other states of consciousness that don't have instinctive neural connectivity to the information, providing those unconscious associations and enabling that instinctive ability for familiarity. Then they may feel like they go by a different name, or they don't go by a name at all. It's helpful to understand this because then we can extend more compassion to these aspects of self-essence. Parts of consciousness are not going to understand why they do or do not affiliate who they are with a certain name. That information is not accessible from the conscious awareness. It all has to do with unconscious implicit neural wiring that's automatically projecting information onto these parts of consciousness. So we can help these parts of ourselves by understanding the structures of neural wiring and how these aspects of ourselves are experiencing it beyond awareness. It's important to work with our parts of consciousness and the neural wiring distinct from each other, because parts are not the neural wiring, but they're not going to instinctively understand that. And so understanding why they're experiencing these unique encounters of self and life helps to extend new healing potentials and compassionate connectivity unconditionally. When applying these neurobiological insights about adaptable consciousness condition, various inner persons may be identified through two specifics. And these provide space for unconditional embrace and connection and acceptance of these aspects of ourselves, our self-essence, and it expands healing potential for the underlying neurobiological structures generating these automated styles of personal experience. The first is recognizing the role that this distinct region of neural data plays within the social engagement system. The second identifier is to recognize the foundation of neural wiring, or the original time period of personal experience that formulated the initial, original, or foundational portions of neural data that then created the baseline from which this inner person experienced an independent sense of self and life. For example, there may be a state of consciousness who is in the social disengagement role of a fight stress response, whose foundation of neural wiring stems from age 14. Then that state of consciousness might experience severe nervous system dysregulation, tachycardia, high energy brainwave dysregulation, high levels of stress hormones and stress neurotransmitters, and age regression associated with the stage of neurodevelopment from age 14. That's going to create a very unique sense of self and life experience, completely stemming from the neurobiological structures and activity beyond awareness. Another state of consciousness might experience the social engagement role of emotional intimacy, and their foundation of neural data began at age 21. They're going to experience life very differently from this other state of consciousness. But the parts of self-essence who are personally encountering these automated sensations of life are not going to understand the neurobiological wiring behind their unique experiences. So understanding this creates embrace for these aspects of self-essence and then expands healing potentials where they might be needed. This state of consciousness might encounter very instinctive styles of nervous system regulation, maybe even with amplification of dopamine or serotonin within the endocrine system. And that is going to be a very different unconscious sensation from this other state of consciousness. I've created a healing journey guide for identifying states of consciousness within unique order of neural wiring within the social engagement system. Please explore the video description below for more information. This healing journey guide is a game changer and provides opportunities to work with states of consciousness very directly and very personally by respectfully embracing these parts of consciousness and identifying particulars of the underlying neural wiring that they are experiencing. Another insight about adaptable consciousness condition is that when there are adjustments within neural activity of these different roles within the social engagement system that are existing, operating, and expanding independently of one another, when there's an adjustment in this neural activity, which may present as a switch of consciousness, for example, there seems to be a tendency for the working memory to reset. It's almost like there's the working memory and it's like the active presence of conscious focus, and then it's pulling its data from neural wiring to kind of bring up specifics for managing and maneuvering current experiences. And it kind of seemed like there's this working memory, right? And it's pulling its data from here, but if the region of neural activity where it's pulling its data from changes, then this whole thing kind of gets wiped clean and then resets. Was kind of what I was noticing. And so it'd be over here, and this region of neural data would be engaging and contributing, and working memory would be pulling some information from there to help maneuver the immediate moments. And then suddenly that was deactivated and this was activated. And so the working memory just kind of got wiped out, totally wiped clean. Whatever thoughts were happening, they're just gone. They're just gone. Like every train of thought, every orientation of self and reality, all of it just wiped clean, and then boom, you got new strands of information coming in. And then there's new thought forms and new understandings of orientation. And this alone was a huge, important discovery in validating unique experiences, validating some health challenges that we're presenting with adaptable consciousness condition, and exploring new healing potentials. Because again, once we understand the neuroscience of unique experiences, we can maneuver healing potentials with much more effective directionality. So understanding that when there's these resets, it's not just the mind going blank randomly. It's not just an experience of the mind. All of the experiences of our mind come from our brain and our body. And understanding that when there's these shifts, or especially when there's switches of consciousness or this chronic style of unique dissociation, then the working memory is getting rebooted and reset. We can have more compassionate space for these experiences and expand potentials for providing effective coping strategies and effective healing modalities. At the neuroscientific core of adaptable consciousness condition exists independent activity between the inner child and the present-day adult self. And then there's all these different roles in between supporting and protecting these aspects of self. So there might be 12 states of consciousness connected with the inner child, 100 states of consciousness creating protection and support for these self aspects, and then 7 states of consciousness affiliated with the present-day adult self as one example. But at the neuroscientific core of adaptable consciousness condition is independent activity between the inner child and the adult self. Through my case studies, I discovered that the inner child is more so connected with the right brain hemisphere and the back parts of the brain, while the adult self is connected with the left brain hemisphere and the front parts of the brain. This especially refers to the cerebral cerebellar, or up brain, down brain, split brain model by Richard and Christopher Berglund. For simplified conceptualization, you can imagine the brain as a circle with a vertical line separating the left and right brain hemispheres and a horizontal line separating the front parts of the brain and the back parts of the brain. And basically, these 4 distinct brain regions do not have connectivity through neural operations within unique orders of wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system, or unique orders, and this includes adaptable consciousness condition. As consciousness flows through these neurobiological structures, then there may be independent activity between these specific brain regions. But the neurobiological core of adaptable consciousness condition is the inner child who experienced a form of childhood trauma or early life traumatic stress, and that aspect of consciousness is more likely to experience brain-body activity originating in the right brain hemisphere and back parts of the brain. Independent activity between the inner child and the present-day adult self who is separated from those traumatic memories in order to continue functioning in the external world in everyday life. And this aspect of consciousness, or these aspects of consciousness, are more likely to experience the left brain hemisphere and or the front parts of the brain. Part of the reality of adaptable consciousness condition, one of the many particulars about this miraculously unique manifestation of consciousness, is independent activity between the four brain regions, referencing the cerebral, cerebellar, or up brain, down brain, split brain model created by Christopher and Richard Berglund. Another way to perceive this element of ACC is that parent-child bonding from the perspective of the child role within the neurobiological social engagement system is here at the baseline of all activity and has developed in association with the traumatic stress response. And that, or those, because there could be one state of consciousness here, or there could be a dozen, just depending on particulars of neurowiring, those regions of neural data are not able to connect with more recent neural wiring sculpted during adulthood. And then there's all these different other roles within the neurobiological social engagement system that are supporting and protecting the inner child and the present-day adult self. This unique neurodevelopment may manifest through an infinite myriad of unique experiences that may pose health challenges. As one of infinite examples, there may be independent activity between inner and outer realities. Internal reality and external reality, according to processing of personal experience, may experience complete autonomy from one another. Through my case studies in self-healing, I identified several hundred, if not close to 1,000, distinct styles of health challenges that can arise with adaptable consciousness condition, as various modalities of operation, brain-body activity in accordance with the neurobiological social engagement system, and activity of memories that are navigating identity and experience, all these different regions of activity engage independently of one another. So there could be hundreds of unique health challenges, implicit battles, or physical health challenges, or both. Okay, so now that we understand the neuroscientific core causality of adaptable consciousness condition, let's get down to the super ultra mega magical, enliveningly, ecstatically exciting news about this amazing, amazing stuff. So now that we get the baseline of adaptable consciousness condition, we can explore healing empowerment through a fresh lens. Through my case studies in self-healing, I discovered that healing can be effective when therapeutic endeavors focus on transforming implicit memories, meaning that therapeutic engagements emphasize the unconscious transformation of implicit emotional and procedural memories. So ordinary talk therapy, when you're talking about the explicits of life, autobiographical details, isn't going to do the job. But there are therapeutic modalities that specifically focus on transforming implicit memories, different from explicit memories. Talk therapy, traditional talk therapy, focuses on explicit memories. But in order to cultivate effective healing, you have to focus on transforming implicit memories, the unconscious emotional and procedural memories. Okay, so the first thing for healing is that therapeutic endeavors focus on transforming implicit emotional and procedural memories. Then there's other healing endeavors, such as physical therapy, that focus on connecting the four brain regions, the left and the right brain hemispheres, and the front parts of the brain with the back parts of the brain. And there are an infinite myriad of healing potentials for this, such as mirror treatments that can be applied for stroke patients as one example, and it manually stimulates new connections between the left and right brain hemispheres. Yoga is also actually another one where you can manually help connect the mind and the body, bridging worlds between the front parts and the back parts of the brain. Healing modalities that emphasize focus on the vagus nerve is going to be another example. And this could be anything from at-home practices where you do certain exercises that allow for vagus nerve adjustments in the activity unconsciously. It could look like manual ways of regulating the autonomic nervous system or sculpting new procedural memories to transform the automated regulatory protocols held in the brainstem and the hind parts of the brain. It could look like a chiropractic adjustment where you do a vagal toggle. There's lots of different ways to focus on the vagus nerve. Okay, so the first one, therapeutic endeavors transforming implicit memories. Second one is other types of healing modalities such as physical therapy where you emphasize connecting left and right brain hemispheres and the front parts and the hind parts of the brain. Then these healing endeavors are supported by daily at-home self-love practices where individuals sensationally meet internal needs within their 4 distinct attachment systems. And this references my liberated consciousness diagram. 4 distinct attachment systems, each carrying specific internal needs. Attachments can only ever be healed from within. So while brain-body activity and unconscious memories may be assisted in their healing transformation by external sources, such as therapists or other types of healers, attachments can only ever be healed from internal energy. So when individuals take time every day and sculpt daily at-home self-love practices, specifically meeting attachment needs within these 4 systems through sensationally felt methods and do this on a daily basis, then they transform attachment systems, which impacts memories and brain-body activity, okay? So therapeutic endeavors to transform implicit memories, other healing endeavors such as physical therapy to connect these various brain regions through manual efforts. And these are supported by daily at-home self-love practices where individuals learn how to meet their own attachment needs for their parts of consciousness. This healing approach provides profound transformation for any type of unique order or unique order within the neural wiring of the neurobiological social engagement system, such as adaptable consciousness condition. From this foundation of healing endeavors, there may be other supplementary healing efforts, and I mentioned this a little later on. But one example is working directly with the central nervous system. When you increase regulation and activity and communicative connections in the central nervous system, then all the other different brain-body operations indirectly benefit, and you create healing for all the different stuff indirectly when you focus on healing in one system. So at the baseline of therapeutic endeavors transforming unconscious implicit memories, supported by other healing efforts like physical therapy, connecting the 4 brain regions according to the split brain model by Christopher and Richard Berglund, supported by daily self-love practices to heal attachment systems. From that foundation, other healing modalities may include working with specific brain-body regulatory processes like respiration or the central nervous system or the somatic nervous system or the enteric nervous system or the autonomic nervous system. And when you increase activity, regulation, communicative connectivity within any of the unconscious systems, you're indirectly benefiting all of the activity because it's all linked with the neurobiological social engagement system. From this foundation, healing is always possible. But you have to understand the neuroscience before creating effective healing modalities. And at present time, traditional methods don't necessarily offer this. So it's really important that we share this information and help expand knowledge across the globe so that every human being can gain access to the healing that they are worthy of. Every human being deserves to be liberated into the full potential of all that they truly are. And traumatic stress never has power to reduce the glorious wonders of who we really are. Never. Never, ever, ever, ever. There is no such thing as a hopeless situation. There is always hope. Where there is life, there is hope. Where there is life, there is always hope. No one is allowed to tell another human being that you can't be helped. And quite frankly, That's what I was told by dozens, if not over 100 doctors. And I want to just say to every human being across the globe, there is always hope. It doesn't matter how deep the darkness seems. It doesn't matter how hopeless or despairing the battle might appear to be. There is always, always hope, because personal experiences stem from neural wiring, and every moment of every day is already reconstructing this neural data. It's already happening. This moment right here is rewiring both of our brains. So the underlying causalities of these implicit battles stems from neural wiring that's already undergoing reconstruction. We just have to interject with loving presence and manually, consciously, intentionally direct how these miraculous brain-body particulars undergo that reconstructive wiring. Any and every type of implicit battle can be transformed. Any state of consciousness can experience liberation from the pain and freedom into the fullness of all that they truly are. Every person living within any body has the opportunity to heal, no matter what. No matter what. Even the state of consciousness within my neurobiological structures who is experiencing neural wiring of a child molester was able to achieve complete liberation through loving presence. Interjecting loving presence into those experiences gradually transformed the neural wiring so that information isn't stuck in my neural data anymore, and those parts of my consciousness no longer need to suffer. There is always hope, no matter what. Always, 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 always opportunities for healing, no matter what the experience is, and no one is allowed to tell you otherwise. That's looking at healing from the neuroscientific perspective. From a psychological perspective, the core of adaptable consciousness condition is an inner child who is experiencing pain and craving liberation. From a psychological perspective, the healing journey prioritizes helping that inner child feel safe, loved, supported, and free to be their true selves. And then helping that inner child connect with the adult who is currently existing. That's another way to perceive the priority of the healing journey with unique orders, including adaptable consciousness condition. I could literally talk for hours about the endless miracles of the complex neural wiring and the unique manifestations of consciousness within personal experience that arise from unique orders or unique order of wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system, such as adaptable consciousness condition. If you'd like to explore more, I do have some previous content creations on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Kristin Chronicles, and also on my previous podcast and written blog titled Exploring Existence with a Certifiable Vagabond. And I have content dating from several years ago when I was experiencing life with adaptable consciousness condition. So please feel free to explore those free content creations of mine online. Unique experiences of consciousness stemming from unique order of neural wiring within the neurobiological social engagement system are extraordinarily misunderstood across the globe, especially on the far end of this spectrum of kaleidoscope integration that may result in living with multiple inner persons, or what I refer to as adaptable consciousness condition. Humanity has a tendency to fear what it does not understand. If there's not an instinctive or innate understanding of something, unconsciousness has a tendency to place a judgment or a fear-based conclusion about that. When we can provide validation for these unique experiences from a neuroscientific lens that addresses all styles of experiences within humanity, we profoundly expand the potential for compassionate acceptance and peaceful unity across the globe. Every person on the planet experiences multiple parts of consciousness through unique neural wiring organized in relation to the social engagement system. Every person is already experiencing themselves and life through this unconscious lens. But it's not something that's very commonly known about or understood. When we can understand that and how these neuroscientific insights apply to ourselves and the people we love, then it's much easier to create space for unique experiences that we might not instinctively understand. If someone comes up and says, I have multiple people living inside of one body, we can respond to that with love by understanding what that actually means. It means that the social engagement system of our neurobiological wiring has all these different roles from all these different years of neural data formation that never achieve connectivity. And because of that, memory data providing a sense of self and navigation through unfolding moments of life that's affiliated with certain styles of brain-body regulation patterns are operating independently of one another. And when we can understand that, okay, you've got multiple persons living inside of one body. That's a miracle. Nice to meet you. And we can just create so much more space for everyone to be the miracle that they innately are. There's no need for fear or judgment on any unique experience of consciousness. Whether it's someone living with borderline personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, or any other unique experience, whether it has a diagnosis and a descriptor or not, whether it fits somewhere or it's just its own unique thing, every person on the planet is a unique, miraculous consciousness flowing through a unique, miraculous brain-body vessel. And the more we understand ourselves and our loved ones, the more we can create space to understand people we normally wouldn't understand. And the more we create space to know about these details, the more we can expand compassion for all of it. It's all allowed. It's all allowed to exist. There's space in this miraculous universe for every unique experience of consciousness. The more we expand our understandings on these topics, the more we can break down these unnecessary walls of fear and judgment and expand connection with ourselves and with one another unconditionally. And a big aspect of creating space for these unique experiences of consciousness is creating space for dissociative age regression. Imagine an adult body living with the neurobiological structures of a child. Imagine one physical body living with 15 different inner persons, and 3 of them are very young children, for example. When we can understand the neuroscientific validity of this and the beautiful uniqueness that has sculpted these experiences and are now sculpting experiences, we can create so much compassionate space for all of it and all parts of everyone. All right. Hold up. Let's pause this official thesis statement exploration. Let's just hang out for a minute, okay? We're gonna play a healing journey game, you and I. I want you to harness your creative curiosity, your conscious compassion, and your calm connection. Gather these C's within you and let's play a little healing journey game, okay? As you watch the following video clip, please use your imagination with love. Explore the miraculous neuroscience of the human experience with me. From my heart to yours, I invite you into this healing journey game with unconditional love. While viewing the following video clip, imagine that the person you're seeing is a 5-year-old girl. The words that she's saying, the way she's articulating them, her facial features, her body language, the way that she understands things and interacts with life and with other people and with herself. Imagine that the person you are seeing is a precious, beloved 5-year-old girl, a small, young child. As you observe her words and her facial features and her body postures and the way she understands concepts and articulates herself, imagine that those details are coming from a small child. Okay, I really need you to tap into your creative curiosity, your conscious compassion, and your calm connection and play this healing journey game with me with unconditional love. Are you up for this challenge, soul friends? I'm going to play this healing journey game with you because I have no conscious memory of the video that I'm about to share with you, even though it was indeed this body who was having that experience. All right, let's check it out.
Yeah, and then I go too, and then that goes there. This one goes right there. My friend, how much should I narrate or just not say anything?
Narrate as much as you want. The more you narrate, the better.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But isn't your narration so much
It's
better?
both of us. No, I mean, I'll fill in the blanks.
But
you narrate whatever you can.
But yours is better.
No, but
you're an adult.
But we need your perspective.
I don't have one.
Well, you don't have to say anything. First of all, yes, you do. Very much so.
Oh. I guess I don't know what that means. What does it mean to have a perspective?
It means that you see things in a certain way.
Oh! I do see things.
So just say whatever you want to say.
Nothing to.
Thank you for lovingly exploring your wondrous imagination with me and compassionately creating space to explore the infinite potentials of miracles within the human experience. From my heart to yours, I thank you for your kindness and your compassion. Thank you for your loving presence in this healing journey game. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program. It is a beautiful, profound miracle to be a child, whether that's a child in a child's body or a child in an adult's body. It is a miracle. Children are miracles, and we should be lovingly embracing every child in the world, no matter what kind of body that child lives in. Humankind is constantly evolving. Look at how far we've come in the past 1,000 years. People back then would look at where we're at now and be like, that's impossible. Now we are continuing to evolve, and a big aspect of our ever-continuing evolution is expanding neuroscientific understandings of the unconscious mind. The more we understand what makes us the people that we are, the more we can create space for all people to be the unique people that they are too. It's time to break down the walls, the illusions of separation and fear and judgment. They are just not necessary anymore. We don't need to feel separate from each other just because we're each having unique experiences. The more we understand what's creating our unique experiences, the more we can connect with our own consciousness and the consciousness of other people within these unique experiences. Imagine a whole world where everyone is able to instinctively understand themselves and one another because we understand unconscious minds and what creates their existence and operations. As humanity continues its miraculous evolution, we realize the neuroscientific validity of living with multiple inner persons, and we create space for all people across the whole globe to be the exact miracles they are unconditionally, whether it's one person in one body or 1,000 people in one body. There's no difference. We're all unique consciousnesses flowing through unique neural wiring. And when we break down these walls with love and compassion and acceptance and embrace, we can create world peace, beginning with us and spreading across the globe.